the Battle of Britain was underway. July 1940 was not faring well for the Britons, as the skies of London and other cities were under siege by the German Luftwaffe. As dawn broke, sleek Heinkel He-111 medium bombers emerged from the London fog, ready to ravage the skies and devastate British anti-aircraft positions. 7 accurate MG-15 machine guns, manned by skilled gunners, were ready to deal with any upcoming threat. Carrying over 4,500 pounds of bombs, the squadron of He-111s approached the city for a swift, low-pass run. Anti-aircraft fire erupted, but neither the bombers nor their pilots flinched. On the contrary, they raced through the smoke and hail of bullets and dropped the bombload without hesitation. The fighters then swarmed the Germans in a desperate bid to protect their city. The German bombers turned back with their enemy behind their tails. A storm of bullets flew around them when the gunners finally opened fire, their barrels running hot with accurate bursts. Some British fighters were driven off, but others pressed on, and then a direct hit sent shockwaves through one of the German bombers, sending the damaged He-111 to the English Channel. Surrounded and firing like a cornered beast, the bomber's maneuverability was put to the ultimate test in its battle for survival. Following the end of World War I, the German aircraft industry faced significant challenges and restrictions due to the terms of the Treaty of Versailles, which imposed severe limitations on Germany's military capabilities. The Treaty of Versailles mandated the disarmament of Germany, including restrictions on the production and possession of military aircraft. This led to the dissolution of the German army aviation industry and the closure of many aircraft manufacturing firms. Although the restrictions were eventually relaxed, as Germany paid a part of its debt, the country was prohibited from developing certain types of military aircraft, such as bombers and long-range reconnaissance planes. This limited the scope of innovation and research within the German aircraft industry. Manufacturers pivoted to civilian aviation, creating commercial airliners and light aircraft. Despite these limitations, military innovation persisted through clandestine development efforts by private entities, laying the foundation for future advancements. The early 1930s paved the way for new German bombers. During this time, Ernst Heinkel Flugzeugwerke AG began developing what would become one of the world's fastest passenger aircraft. After attracting the attention of the Luftwaffe, the civilian airliner turned into the Model 70, a medium bomber envisioned to become the backbone of the rising German Air Force. Flying for the first time in 1935, the Model 70 was adopted into service with the designation Heinkel He-111. It featured a sleek, streamlined fuselage that housed the crew, bomb bay, and fuel tanks. The He-111 stood out from its counterparts with its glazed nose section, which provided excellent visibility for the bombardier and pilot at the cost of protection. Furthermore, the medium bomber had a low-wing monoplane configuration with a straight, tapered wing design. The wings housed the engine nacelles and landing gear. The tail section featured a single vertical stabilizer and horizontal stabilizer, enhancing the distinctive appearance of Heinkel's bomber. Initially powered by 2 Daimler-Benz DB601 liquid-cooled inline engines, later variants would feature upgraded engines for improved performance, allowing them to reach up to 270 miles per hour and achieve a range of around 1,400 miles. Defensive armament typically included up to 7 MG-15 or MG-81 machine guns positioned in dorsal, ventral, and nose positions to fend off enemy fighters. Additional offensive equipment included a 20mm MG-FF cannon and an M6-131 machine gun. As a bomber, the He-111 had a 4,400-pound internal bomb bay and could carry up to 7,900 pounds of bombs externally. The Heinkel He-111 bombers made their combat debut during the Spanish Civil War of 1936. The conflict gave Hitler and the Wehrmacht the perfect opportunity to test vehicles and armament for future military operations in Europe. The Spanish airspace became the testing ground for German aircraft dispatched to help Francisco Franco's forces as they fought the Republican troops, aided by the Soviet Union and other powers. On paper, the German Condor Legion was a group of German volunteers serving the nationalist forces. In reality, it was the training ground for Luftwaffe pilots and aircraft. The first batch of Heinkel He-111Bs arrived in Spain in February 1937. It went for the skies of Guadalcanal on March 9th, providing air support to nationalist forces attempting to conquer the city from the Republicans. German pilots felt extremely comfortable flying the bomber. It was easy to control and handle, paving the way for additional deliveries in the upcoming months. The He-111s proved more effective during combat operations than the Do-17 and Ju-86 aircraft. As air operations over Spain increased, the Condor Legion gathered more experience, allowing the pilots to provide the Luftwaffe with the He-111's performance. Heinkel gathered as much information as possible from the pilots fighting in Spain to refine and improve the bombers as much as it could. It paid off, leading to the introduction of the He-111E in 1938, during the last year of the war in Spain. During air operations, Luftwaffe pilots concluded that the He-111E could easily outrun Soviet fighters in combat, ditching the idea of increasing the bomber's defensive weaponry. Although reasonable then, the German Air Force would regret it once World War II broke out and the Allies introduced faster aircraft. The Spanish Air Force and Franco were so impressed by the He-111's performance during the conflict that Spain acquired the license to build Spanish versions of the Heinkel during World War II. The Spanish Casa II 111 would serve Spain until the late 1970s. While preparing for the invasion of Poland in early September 1939, the first bomber considered by the Luftwaffe was the Heinkel He-111. It became the spearhead of the bombing campaigns once the infantry and armor overtook western Poland. During the invasion, the German blitzkrieg had several objectives, mainly achieving air superiority to incapacitate Polish air defenses, communication lines, military infrastructure, and industrial centers. The Luftwaffe launched a massive aerial assault on Polish cities, military installations, and transportation hubs. Waves of German bombers, including Junkers Ju-87 Stuka dive bombers and Heinkel He-111 medium bombers, conducted relentless attacks, causing widespread destruction and casualties. For the first time in history, the Germans utilized innovative tactics such as dive bombing, precision strikes on key targets, and coordinated attacks with ground forces on a massive scale. The Heinkel He-111 was at the heart of the action, pulverizing Polish morale through efficient bombing operations. Nevertheless, the Polish Air Force continued to mount determined counterattacks, leading the Luftwaffe to upgrade the Heinkel He-111's defensive countermeasures, such as increased speed to continue evading enemy aircraft. However, there was no rest for the Heinkel's crews. They were called upon to support Kriegsmarine operations against the British Royal Navy in early 1940. He-111s performed low-level runs against British shipping in the North Sea to weaken the British economy. Once the enemy decided to invade Norway, Hitler took one step forward and secured it before the Britons could cut off Germany from the sea. He-111s were once again called to battle to take part in the occupation of Denmark and Norway. While dropping paratroopers over enemy skies, the Luftwaffe experimented with some variants of the medium bomber, equipped with a jump hatch and space for 16 paratroopers to airdrop them over hostile lines. With Eastern and Northern Europe under control, the German forces prepared for the most demanding military challenge yet, the war against France. The German High Command led several diversions to lure the French into thinking the Maginot Line would defend them, first attacking the Low Countries in Belgium. At the same time, German armored divisions advanced from the south to cut off French armies from behind. Taking part in the Rotterdam Blitz days later, the He-111 soared over the city, their engines roaring as they unleashed their deadly payload upon strategic targets below. The sky was ablaze with the glow of explosions, as the city's defenses struggled to repel the offensive. The He-111s continued their relentless assault, pounding the Allied forces as they retreated. As the month wore on, the He-111s turned their attention to the British forces during the Dunkirk evacuation. Flying low over the beaches, they unleashed their bombs with precision, wreaking havoc and unleashing terror in the troops below, awaiting rescue from the evacuation boats. With the fall of France in June 1940, the Luftwaffe shifted its focus to the invasion of Britain. Along the English Channel, squadrons of He-111s assembled alongside formations of Do-17s and Junkers Ju-88s. Like in the early phases of the war, The medium bombers led the attacks into British airspace. As they swept across the Channel, they encountered fierce resistance from RAF fighters. Hawker Hurricanes and Supermarine Spitfires engaged the bombers in intense dogfights, filling the skies with tracer fire and smoke. During the early phases of the Battle of Britain, the HE-111s faced challenges for the first time. Vulnerable to head-on attacks by the British fighters due to their glazed nose and lack of armor, the HE-111s struggled to defend against the assaults of the RAF. Fighter escorts became necessary, while repeated engagements exposed the limitations of their defensive armament. As such, the HE-111s stopped being the aggressive fighters they once were and adopted a new role: strategic bombing. Although not designed for this role, the reliable Heinkel aircraft delivered, pounding British cities to subjugate the Empire by force. Simultaneously, the HEs were deployed across the Balkans and mainland Greece to support the Italians fighting the Greeks on the ground. The bombers were also critical in providing support to transport aircraft airdropping German paratroopers to seize control of Crete. More broadly, the HE-111s were also painted light brown for the immediate deployment of Erwin Rommel's elite Africa Corps in northern Africa. For the invasion of the Soviet Union, the Luftwaffe introduced several variants of the Heinkel that increased bomb load and fuel storage for increased range. Following the launch of Operation Barbarossa, the medium bombers were deployed alongside their escort fighters to provide tactical support to the advancing infantry and armor. To stop the Soviet production line and deployment of troops via trains, the medium bombers flew close to the frozen landscapes to strike Red Army rail networks and production facilities to halt Soviet arms delivery. As the war escalated and fewer aircraft were available, the HE-111s began to serve as transport when necessary, evacuating wounded soldiers and delivering supplies during the Battle of Stalingrad. By the spring of 1943, the number of Heinkel bombers available declined, as other aircraft, like the Ju-88, took on more responsibilities. Despite this, the HE-111 continued to conduct more assaults against Soviet shipping in the Black Sea, using the innovative FUG-200 Hohentville anti-shipping radar. In 1944, Heinkel experimented with unique variants of the HE-111, such as the HE-111 Zwilling, or twin. This design mated two HE-111s, and was initially conceived to carry gliders and deliver anti-ship missiles. HE-111s were employed to deliver V-1 flying bombs to Britain in late 1944. As Germany began to shrink during the last months of the war, HE-111s were used in numerous evacuation operations to extract German soldiers and civilians. They remained in this role until the very end of the war. In May 1945, American troops captured a Heinkel H-20 variant optimized for carrying 16 paratroopers and 3 crew members. They dispatched it to Cherbourg, France, where it awaited naval transport in the United States for evaluation. Nonetheless, the aircraft could not be shipped aboard HMS Reaper due to a lack of space. Then, an unlikely pair of aviators from the Army Air Forces stepped in to fly the aircraft to Essex. But not for the desired reasons. The men wanted to turn the bomber into their private aircraft to fly around the countryside and take them to their home base in the UK. The American crew of the 56th USAAF Fighter Group comprised Major Carter, Major Williamson, and Captain Ordway. The aviators painted the bomber with their unit colors and monogram and learned to fly it the hard way. Despite not having any contact with the German bomber, the Americans managed to take it to the skies without any troublesome issues, except flying for over an hour above their home base, trying to figure out how to lower the landing gear. Once the men got the hang of it, they took the Heinkel HE-111 for trips around Germany, France, and the UK, attracting interest wherever they went. Unfortunately, fun ran out for the aviators when they were ordered to return to the United States. They wished to return their bomber to the mainland, but it was impossible. The 3 friends considered cutting up the aircraft, but couldn't do so due to its quality. It was such a fine aircraft that the pilots refused to destroy it. Unable to pass it to another American airbase, the pilots considered hiding the bomber in a desolated RAF base with lax security. Thus, Carter, Williamson, and Ordway devised a stealth plan to take their prize to the RAF, as the Britons were willing to accept the bomber without any transfer documents. On September 12, 1945, Carter took off from Buxted and landed at RAF North Weald, parking the Heinkel near the watchtower and fleeing the scene before security noted it. The next day, the trio of American aviators who grew fond of their cherished bomber left for the States, leaving a surprise for the British airmen stationed in North Weald. Puzzled by the sudden apparition of a German bomber painted with the U.S. Army Air Force's insignias, the Brits opted to put the aircraft on display in the German aircraft display at RAF Farnborough instead of destroying it. Since then, this unique Heinkel He-111 bomber has been used for various films and documentaries. It remains at the RAF Museum in London for visitors to appreciate it. This singular story is a testament to the universal passion that aviators worldwide share for flying an aircraft that have passed across the skies with the grace of everyday birds.